Hello, Daniel. Very nice to meet you. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm
Good.
ready to perform.
Well, you look very chic with your bow tie.
Thanks.
Yes. So, what would you like to perform, and who is your pianist you brought with?
My pianist is Laeiszhalle from Academia. And
Very nice
I
meeting.
have three pieces today.
Okay.
Richard Strauss Zueignung, Schubert Du bist die Ruhe,
Ja.
und Brahms Feldeinsamkeit. And I want to
Great.
start with Strauss.
Super.
Ja, du weißt es, teure Seele, dass ich fern von dir mich quäle. Liebe macht dich herzenkrank. Habe Dank. Einst hielt ich der Freiheit Zeche, hoch den Amethystenbecher, und du segnetest den Trank. Habe Dank. Und beschworst darin die Bösen, bis ich, was ich nie gewesen, heilig, heilig ans Herz dir sank. Habe Dank.
Both of you beautiful, really, very beautiful, very beautiful. Well, there's not so much to say, really. Your German is very good.
Thanks.
I'm very impressed. Let's first, before we start working on things, let's do the same question I asked the other two colleagues of yours. I don't know if you listened to what I was asking. So could you please name me three things where you're amazing in, and why a manager or casting director should exactly hire you as one of the 5 million baritones, and not someone else?
Okay.
So what are your strengths?
Three, yes. I think first it will be timbral qualities, because everyone we have different timbres, and I was told that mine is special and somehow different from another's. Second, I will tell emotionality, how I feel this piece. Of course, it's subjective, but I can tell that I feel it. And third, it's a hard question, you know.
I know.
Third, maybe my strength, how I feel free on the stage, how I can release my emotions with my voice.
Okay.
Maybe how safe I feel with my voice. Yeah.
Okay. What are three things you would like to improve, getting better in?
Right now,
Yeah. What you feel right? Yeah. Not particularly because you think maybe in this piece what you didn't do perfectly, but I think generally where you would like to become better in.
I would like to be better in breath control, because sometimes I have trouble with it, and my vibrato becomes in the tremolo side more, especially when I'm on stage. About pianissimo things, because I'm 90% I'm forte, and when I try to do pianissimo, I do it badly.
Okay.
I will try it, but I become so stressful in pianissimo things. And third, I think my range in general. Better high notes, better low notes, and better transition from one register to another. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for sharing. Well, things you said, I agree fully, completely. Richard Strauss has been very often performed by singers who do lead, but also a lot of opera singers love Richard Strauss because it's not just the accompaniment, which is very orchestral and very, very, very rich, but also the way how lines are written. It's can be sang with a very operatic voice without thinking in too small bits as we do as song singers. And I think that's the attraction. But what I find also with Strauss is he's so precise with the voice. And actually, I think it's way more interesting if we look into all the little details and make it even more, building bigger contrasts between what we sing. Otherwise, it very often becomes one big soup. And that would be a shame. So I think it's very important, I said it before to a colleague of yours, but I think it's also here very important to get a feeling of the structure of the song. How many verses are there? What are the differences of our statement in every verse? And maybe he also writes from time to time a little bit different signs, how to find the right interpretation of it. So I would like to just first look at that, and then we will have a look at the breath and breath control and how we deal with that. So could we start the piece again? And you are more aware of the first verse now, what he wrote really into the vocal score, but also what he wrote in the piano part. Thank you.
Ja, du weißt es, teure Seele, dass ich fern von dir mich quäle. Liebe macht dich herzenkrank. Habe Dank.
It's better. I think it's, as you say, it's about also flexibility of sound and having sometimes a piano and having sometimes not a piano. And also what I also would like to work with you on now, sorry, I have hundreds of cables here and I have to get, somehow I feel uncomfortable with that. What I would like now as an exercise with you is that you challenge your wonderful pianist from time to time, and sometimes you pull and you go forward faster, you sing faster, and then you pull back and you actually take time. You know what I mean? It's like making the pianist now for these 8 bars or whatever, 10 bars, very uncomfortable and take sometimes time and surprise her all the time. Can we try that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm feeling so sorry for you on the piano, but very good. Can we do it even more crazy now? One more. Really crazy. Take time where you have the feeling it needs a huge amount of time, and then forward when you have the feeling also the words or the sentence or the emotion have to flow faster. Okay?
Ja, du weißt es, teure Seele, dass ich fern von dir mich quäle. Liebe macht dich herzenkrank. der Freiheitswächter hockten alle tristen Bächer, und du segnetest den Trank. Habe Dank. Beschworst darin die bösen Bissig, was ich nie gewiesen. Heilig, heilig, ans Herz dir sank.
I mean, there were things you normally, a teacher would never tell you to do because it's not written. But as an exercise now and as the next step, how did you feel doing that stuff?
It was interesting. Yeah, it was like a passion that burns right now. So it's
And you as a pianist, how did you feel when he was swifting around?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay? No, you reacted beautifully. It's not in the end, it's a step between, but I think it's important for you that you have a feeling. Then it's more about how you feel about it than actually in the end really doing that much tempo-wise. But it's important that sometimes we know that we can come a little bit earlier, we can take a little bit time within a amount of, time being there. So you can actually on top float a little bit more around, and that gets suddenly so exciting for us as a listener as well. It's not just really performing, everything on beat. And also suddenly there is also a change of view also in volume and it's suddenly also the voice becomes through that also more flexible and it's not on one line. What I would like to try out now is the next step, doing the first two verses and not to an accelerando always in the same bits, which are obvious, but actually now work sometimes completely against the natural flow. So that would be also interesting for us to see. For example, you always did you got faster there, or for example. But actually play sometimes around and do exactly the opposite, so that you are very aware that not everything is musically right or what you feel in this moment, but it gives you a wider palette of your possibilities, what you can. Can we try the first two verses? And
so it will be like exercise. Yeah,
just an exercise. We go step by step, and
so
just do more than you would.
Unlogical things right now.
Completely unlogical, as you would never sing it, and can be completely out of normality and completely crazy.
Ja, du weißt es, teure Seele, dass ich fern von dir mich quäle. Liebe, mach die Herzen krank. Habe Dank.
Sorry, be crazier. That was really. I thought the first time you did it was crazier than now. Really, completely over. Like no teacher would ever tell you to do it. Tasteless.
Okay. Ja, du weißt es, teure Seele, dass ich fern von dir mich quäle. Liebe, mach die Herzen krank. Habe Dank. I es den Trank, habe Dank. Beschworst darin die Bösen, bis ich, was ich nie gewiesen. Heilig, heilig, als Körst dir sank.
Great. Well, you're a wonderful pianist. You're very good in following. Fantastic. The thing is, there are a lot of things you would never do in a performance, obviously. Mm-hmm. But what I really want to give you the feeling of that you are in charge of things and you have time to do things differently and to play around, and it's not a performance you think of. We have to do our pre-work a lot in the room, but in the end, it's the freedom which actually is exciting in a performance. One thing before we do another song, I would like to check with you. So the first, you did it now differently, what I liked. I mean, you can do a breath after, ja, du weißt es, but at the start of a song, I feel it's nice to be generous in the beginning and to experience your voice and to get the feeling of your voice. And therefore, in this case, you could breathe because of the comma, but I would take a breath if there is an exclamation mark. Really as a ja, then I would do it. But here, somehow it would be nice to really experience your voice fully in the beginning. So I would not take a breath if it's not necessary. And it's written piano. The second verse is written mezzo forte. The third one is piano, written religioso, so with grandezza. So I don't hear really a big difference between the first and the second verse, how you do it.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
The second verse is really eccentric. It's about, the cup, it's about drinking and it's about really, it's about enjoying yourself and drinking and orgastic almost, But the first one, you really don't know. It's almost an intimate conversation. Ja, du weißt es, teure Seele. It's a very intimate thing between you and your inner life. And I would like to have a difference because it's quite a big difference in the text. So can we have one more look to that? We don't have to do the last, maybe the beginning of the last. No, let's do an entire song.
So to do more contrast between first and second verse.
Yes, and it's because it's a huge contrast in your, as I said, in your inner life. The first one is really a conversation with your inner life, with your soul, and that you have pain and your heart is aching. The second one is really having a big party. And the last one, suddenly it comes in this religious, high emotion which stands above everything, where you bounce. And I think it's a danger in this song that you give too much away in the beginning. Because where to go? It's always, the first verse is almost like, you're sitting on a carriage and you have the horses and they want to go faster and faster, and you really have to keep them back. And that's almost what you have to do with your power and your energy and your voice as well. You have to keep it back. So in the end, not in an aggressive way, but in a higher way, in a lifted up way, in a religious way, you actually, like a big priest, like a Sarastro, are in the end really give the big statement. Okay? Let's try it once more, and then we will have time for another song.
Weißt es, teure Seele, dass ich fern von dir mich quäle, Liebe macht dich herzenkrank. Habe Dank. Hielt ich der Freiheit sicher, hoch den Beschworst darin die Bösen bis ich, was ich nie gewesen, heilig, heilig ans Herz dir sank.
Very good. I think generally not now, but you could go further. And to me, you seem to be a very confident young man, and I think it's wonderful. It's also nice to see sometimes the fragile. You're very different than the other singers. Everyone brings completely different conditions with him or herself. And I think what you could work on is really the more fragile, direct way with someone. It's it's beautiful when the voice is bloomy and big, and you know it's at least what comes across here. It's very attractive, but I think what you could look into is the direct, intimate, inner way of communication as well. Like in the first verse, there's something which I would have liked to have more. And when it gets up, it's really nice. Great. Can we have a short look into one of the other songs you mentioned?
Yeah.
What would you like to do?
We can do Schubert.
Fantastic.
Schmerz aus dieser Brust voll sei dies Herz von deiner Lust, von deiner Lust. Dies Augenzelt von deinem Glanz allein erhellt. O vieles ganz, o vieles ganz.
Beautiful, thank you both. There are a few things now in German I wanted to look at. So there are three, I will rush a little bit through now, so because there are three things I want to talk to you. The first thing is German pronunciation. Sometimes with an H, starting a word with H. I hear a little bit, and that's very Slavic, very often. And we don't have like, it's, it sits higher. So, kehr ein bei mir und schließe du still. It's a very soft one, and there's no, the tongue doesn't sit down. It's a higher tongue. It's like a cat.
Hinter.
Hinter.
Not hinter.
It's not hinter.
Hinter.
Yeah? Same also later, erhält. Also not, it's erhält. There is also then, sometimes I miss glottals. Kehr ein. You see, kehr ein, kehr ein. Also later on, there is, o fühl es. It's unvoiced, and I hear through my headphone es, but it's unvoiced.
Yes.
Maybe you do it, but sometimes it's difficult to hear here, but it's unvoiced. This is one, and the Wohnung is a closed vowel. Zur Wohnung hin. Yeah? So this is number one. Number two is tempo here. I said before, you have to be flexible. What I don't mean is that you always slow down to every bar line. Mein Auge und Herz, so you can do it once or twice, but not at every bar, because then really you drag us and the pianist completely down. So it's an option you can use, a choice you can use one or twice, but not all the time. So I think it's very important, particularly in this song, where there's this constant movement in the piano, that you actually bounce on it, but you never, or very rarely, really push it back or give up this beautiful movement throughout the piece. And this will also bring you actually, brings me to the third point, which makes your life way easier if you have a feeling of bouncing and rhythm, that you actually don't struggle with the breathing so much. And you get the direction suddenly of the song and the direction of the lines, and you don't get stuck off, always drowning. I think that's very important. Also particularly in the last two lines. Dies Augenzelt von deinem Glanz. And you can move here even further and a little bit faster forward to make it easier. Yeah? If you take so much time and you drag, it will be very hard then to have this freedom and mezzo di voce later on. When we take a breath, we always take a breath knowing how long the phrase afterwards is. So if it's Du bist die Ruhe, for example, and we take a breath afterwards, we can or we can't, but right now let's say we do. Du bist die Ruhe. I only take a breath for this phrase, which is particularly exactly for this phrase. I don't pump up everything. Du bist die Ruhe. I don't do that. I take a natural breath as we do in speaking. When I speak to you, I also don't do. When I speak to you, if you do that, actually it gets very inflexible. And you pump up, and actually you can't release this air, and you think you have more breath, but in the end you don't have. So in the end, ideally, end of a singing phrase, you are kind of at the end of your breath. So you have the energy to release and completely fully take the breath in again. And I have the feeling you don't really think of how much breath you breathe in for each phrase. If they're long phrases, of course, we have to need a very deep, long breath. But for shorter periods, shorter phrases, we actually take only the breath for this short period.
Okay.
If it makes sense. Can we try that? Sorry?
No, my problem is like, I want to have as much breath as I can do, because I'm not sure how long I will take this phrase. Maybe it will be 2 sentences together, maybe not.
Yeah.
It's like every
well,
time.
that's what happens in a performance. Suddenly we feel the freedom to carry on and we feel very comfortable. But I think it's very important that you actually are very flexible with that, because when you also do opera or oratorio with the conductor, suddenly you rehearse for 4 weeks this tempo of an aria, and suddenly this man down in the pit suddenly conducts slower or faster, and you have to cope with it. So we have to be flexible all the time. But it doesn't mean that we try out in our rehearsal room how differently we can do and how long we can phrase it. And sometimes I think it makes sense in sentences where we have, period, that we really take a breath and there's a new thought. I think there are always, in every aria, in every song, there are anchors where we surely will take a breath. And then there are some bits where we actually have freedom of breathing. But it's very important to know the very anchors which are always the same. It doesn't make sense in the sentence when I say, I'm going to the forest today, tomorrow I will do that. So you're not saying, I'm going to the forest today, tomorrow I do that. You also don't do that when they speak. And I like when you perform in a very natural way how you also would talk to me. I think that's so important to communicate, and we make singing so natural with all the beautiful artistic things we do around. But I think the language has to be very natural to connect with people. And therefore, I think it's very important for you to know your breathing. Also, how early you start. Sometimes with a short breath, it gives you different energy, it gives you different emotion, it gives you different attitude. So I think it's very important not to have, as a singer, we have to learn how to take a deep breath, how to really release, how to, also breathe on all sides, not to, lift the shoulders and have a stable column and so on. That's all important to know and to practice. But it's also important to be flexible with the breathing, as it's something very natural. It's not something automatic like an organ which always fills up, in the same way. We are different. Also, we are nervous and not. An organ is never nervous. So that's something I think is very important for you, timing and the way how you take a breath. Mm-hmm. I would also recommend you in the second verse, kehr ein bei mir, breath, und schließe du still hinter dir. Maybe here breath. If you don't, you don't need it. You can carry on. But it makes sense from the German, and it also is something different to the first verse, which we always like when there are different options. So these are a few ideas. We're running out a bit of time. That's my problem. I would like to try out with you. But can we, with this knowledge, try the very last Dies Augen zählt, maybe with 2 bars in from your wonderful pianist, and then you get the feeling of moving forward and being in the spirit, in the tempo, and then also take the breath the 2 times or 3 times, however you often, as what you think you really need for the phrase. If you do too much, it really, you get so stuck and you have even less breath, even if you think you have more inside you. It's air which is stuck. Mm-hmm. Okay? Great, thank you.
Oh,
Great. How did that feel?
It was more in freedom, I think, for me.
Yeah,
I don't know
I think you took,
how for you.
if you take a breath before our line and afterwards, then you don't need so much before our line. It was again a huge breath.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that, I mean, depending, but einem Glanz allein. Can you see that's very short? Glanz allein and it's not Glanz allein. You can't take a deep breath. It has to be shorter and more active. And but I thought generally it went way better, also being in tempo and having this flexibility. I think that's wonderful. Again, I just remind you, O full S. I still hear es ganz. Es ganz. Okay?
Okay.
Sorry for rushing, but tell me 3 things you think you might take with you from this session.
Be more free with interpretation, because I'm stuck with tempo. It needs to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. To be more free with tempos. Not doing the same things, ritenuto, every phrase, every same note, and to be more careful with German language, maybe.
But you're on a very good way with that.
Thanks.
Super. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much for playing beautifully. All the best, and maybe see you later in the question and answer session. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you.